an event that I think I got to point first and foremost to the PDRA crew, right? This is a group of people led by Tyler Crossnow that are truly dedicated to what they're trying to do, truly dedicated to trying to create a perfect, as close to perfect experience for their racers and fans as humanly possible. And I think we saw that on display this past weekend in Benson. Having that many cars on the property, I believe 336 cars on the property, nothing to bat your eyes at. A really incredible car count to start the season, especially way out on the East Coast. No doubt a solid region for the sport of drag racing, but not exactly something that's friendly for those in the Midwest or deep South, what have you. But 336 cars on the property, 44 pro mods, 20 in pro nitrous, 24 in pro boost. Massively impressive. A 16-car field of Mountain Motor Pro Stock cars, a dozen Outlaw Pro 632 cars. A really, really, really incredible door slammer show. I wrote it down somewhere. I've got to find it in my other notes. I've got multiple pages of notes going here, but where's this at? I counted 72 guys, pro level heads up door cars. That's a lot. Like 72 big rigs,
the
fast
top
cars.
Sportsman deal there is crazy.
Yeah, and that excludes that. It completely excludes all the 3-second jaw-droppingly fast sportsman cars that are on the property. 72, like 415 and faster cars. That's nuts.
Yeah, and Pro Stock again is included in that. That was a huge showing this weekend as well. Just record-setting runs, like you said, huge car count, and I think PDRA really, we talked about them coming off what we thought was their most successful season last year. I think they're carrying that momentum. We saw them re-debut the top end zone, which is something that we're big fans of here at Drag Illustrated. And I think that they probably heard enough feedback from the racers. I think that's a huge deal for the racers as well, to be able to see plug their sponsors and get a little microphone time at the end of the run. I think that's a welcome addition that they brought back. And the PDRA Live, we got to give a little
I didn't even
shameless
mention that.
plug. We're doing a new show on Thursday to kind of coincide with Thursday testing with each PDRA event for the season. Wes, myself, JT, Nate, our editor-in-chief that goes to every PDRA race, will be joining us, and it will be led by Derek Beach and Scotty Gore, the announcing team at PDRA. They did a heck of a job on the first episode.
They did.
So check that out. It's going to be streaming on our page and on their on PDRA's Facebook page as well. Excited to kind of bring this format in a way to PDRA.
I think it's great for them. Somebody has to be talking about this stuff, right? Somebody needs to be talking about it before and after the fact. And I'm glad the PDRA, this is something we want to do more of. My vision for this is to have content like that, show type content, as often as we can possibly execute it. And that PDRA live show, the first episode, it ticked all the boxes for me, right? It was a fantastic
for a first episode. I thought
doing
really
it
good.
Live at the racetrack. Yep. I mean, we got background noise we're contending with. We didn't have adequate lighting or camera rigging. We're using Nate's computer. We had a couple of things change at the last minute, and hey, it's all good, and we made the most of it. And I got to tell you, man, Derek and Scotty, I thought they killed it. I really do. We can turn that deal over to them. The quicker I get myself out of that deal, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
I remember when we first started, I said, so what are we going to be talking about? And Derek, he was like, busted out a scroll of notes. I took some notes. And I'm like, all right, this dude's ready to go. So
I enjoyed it, man. Really cool. The storylines from the PDRA, man, I think it would be crazy. I don't want to beat on this too much because it's bad news for some guys, or for one team in particular, but it was so odd to see Jim Halsey go out early, right? And when you have the success that Jim Halsey has had in the PDRA and drag racing in general, it's going to be big news when you struggle, and when you go out, and it's not like he struggled, qualified number one with a 365 that seemed to disappoint him. By all accounts, everybody that I talked to was like, oh man, those guys were kicking rocks. They ran a 365 and they're like staring at the ground, not throwing headsets, but like
that's kind of their typical deal though. Like it takes a lot to get those guys fired up about a run. I mean, the bar is so high for them.
Really, really high. And to see them go out, it's funny, and we talk about there's a multitude of examples of this, but it's actually when somebody like Jim Halsey moves out of the equation or isn't in the equation, even if it's just for the weekend, you can't help but get a little excited for the space that's going to create for someone else, right? If Jim Halsey's off the ladder early, someone else is going to have a long weekend that more than likely wouldn't have otherwise, and it's really cool, to be honest.
Cool for Cam Clark too. Longtime racer here in the Carolinas, big dog guy, young guy, really.
Yeah,
He's under 30 for sure. I don't know exactly how old he is, but him and his dad raced together, kind of a scrappy team. To see them compete in Pro Nitrous and take out, the big dog first round was very cool, and a lot of cool racing in Pro Nitrous. Jay Cox going to the finals against Mike Achenbach, the mountain man.
It's great to see the pumpkin like back in championship form, right? I mean, he had a little bit, let's call last year up something of a rebuilding season, changed engine programs, made a bunch of program changes to the program. And it's like drag racing's better when Jay Cox is doing well, right? We need him producing sound bites. I would say he's the biggest character or personality that the PDRA has.
That's what I was going to say.
He's the biggest character that they have. And so we need this dude driving backwards up the racetrack to get into a fight. We need, that's the type of stuff that we need. And we know he's capable of doing that. He's done it. And I think we need more and more and more of that. As much of that as we can see, the better. Because if he can, I don't know how we weave this in to the conversation. And I know we've got some notes and a little bit of a structure to follow, but they have everything else. Like I was almost the PDRA racing, the product is so good, dude. Yep. Like the racing I went through, and I don't know, this is a metric that I think we should start using. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Mike, because I want you to finish, but out of 60 possible races, right? If you consider a full 16 car field in Pro Boost, Pro Nitrous, Pro Stock, and Outlaw Pro 632, right? 4 eliminators, 16 cars in each one, not in Pro 632, but typically, right? There's the potential for 60 side-by-side drag races, right? And this is something we talk about all the time. Events, sanctioned series that struggle with side-by-side racing. Like, let's see some killer drag racing. 48 out of 60. I went through and counted, and I threw out any runs that were, one car shook and the other car went right down. Any run that I felt was like close, like a good race, cars left together, and it was relatively close at the finish line. 48 out of 60. 80% of the races on Saturday at the PDRA East Coast Nationals in Benson were hella good drag races. I think that stat stands tall in our sport. I mean, I really do.
And the crowds are starting. I mean, they had a great crowd, right?
Yeah.
So I think Tyler told us is one of the best crowds in 4 years. I think
the best crowd in 4 years.
The best, yeah. And I don't know if that means just Galat or the series as a whole.
I'm assuming series as a whole.
Yeah, but it looked well attended, and I think that the class Pro Nitrous, I was a little bit concerned about it going into the season, just to see what kind of health we were going to have in that class. But I think it's going to be strong. I think you're going to see some new guys over there like Cam that we just talked about. And then, to have Jay running strong is good. I think Jay has searched for consistency over the last couple of years. And I think if he's found it or can find it soon and stay consistent, he's deadly. But that's the challenge. I mean, you get there. I talked to Jay. He said, the track got a little cool and it got a little unpredictable there at the end, and he had too much. So it really, if you're racing in those conditions and these cars are on the edge like they are, then you're going to run into some of that. But Pro Nitrous looked healthy. Pro Boost, extremely healthy. We saw Stevie Jackson show up over there, Melanie Selemi knocking down the scoreboards every pass, it seemed like. And then to see Stan Shelton, I think, has really put on a show to start the year. We saw him at the Midwest Drag Racing Series season opener at XRP. He ran well there, and then followed that up running just as well and consistent at the PDRA season opener, taking out Stevie on a whole shot, taking out Melanie Selemi on a whole shot, and had a whole shot on Todd Tuttorro in the finals, but didn't have enough to beat Todd, which, that's another story there in Pro Boost, is to see Todd Tuttorro go to the finals, one of our nominees for Racer of the Year last year. And really, if we had that award every year for about the past 20 years, especially in door slammer racing, Todd Tuttorro is a name that would be on that short list.
I think he's going to, we love those Mount Rushmore conversations, but if you had to have an outlaw, if you had to have like a fast door slammer, all door slammer racing sans NHRA Pro Stock maybe, or something. You know what I mean? He is on the Mount Rushmore of outlaw door slamming greats, door slammer greats. It really is incredible. And I worry about guys sometimes when they start to tune a bunch of cars, because I've just seen it. I've seen it. It's a rare air for people to be able to be successful. It's like when you're in business and you've got too many things going on. I read one time that you can really only be meaningfully contributing to 3 projects.
We wouldn't know anything about that.
We wouldn't know anything about that, right? And if you're trying to make a meaningful contribution to 70 things, it's hard. It takes a special person. I mean, the rule is that you're going to struggle, but there are always exceptions to the rule. Todd Tuttorro is an exception to the rule, man. I feel he's building a really strong business, helping all these different teams. He's tuning on Tommy Gray's car. He's helping the Deckers. He's helping Barry Mitchell in Big Dog competition. He's building engines. They've got quite the program right there, not to mention what they're doing with Kurt Stedding and the team they're racing with. And the fact that he's able to do all that and then still jump behind the wheel and be a difference maker and a guy that can go to the winner's circle at will, massively, massively impressive. And it's great because we talk about that sometimes like we just were. There's stuff that happened at Drag Illustrated 10, 15 years ago that are really, really cool. But a lot of the people that we're engaged with now don't even remember that, right? They didn't even know we existed back then. And my heart goes out to the Todd Tuttorros of the world because they had these huge moments in time, right? Where winning championships, 200 miles an hour every time he runs. I mean, that was a big deal. Remember when we were calling him Mr. 200?
Yeah.
I mean, that was
he was on
thing.
the cover, in I think 2009 or something like that. But then we put him on the cover again just a year or two ago. Great Rick Belden shot that we did here at ZMAX Dragway. And I always love following up on those stories.
I know, right?
About somebody that has been doing it for so long, and then we were able to go back and put them on the cover again and show what they've done since then.
I think it's a super cool thing, and I'm glad to see Todd Tuttorro in the mix. I didn't expect to see 24 Pro Boost cars there. I certainly didn't expect to see 20 Pro Nitrous cars, but that was a really, really impressive start to the season. And I think we'd be crazy not to talk about Melanie Selemi. I honestly think that performance on Friday, those 3 runs, 58, 358 off the trailer, 357 in the second round of qualifying, and under the lights Friday night, Galat Motorsports Park, one of the most incredible 8th mile drag racing facilities on the planet. I'm going to say the most incredible 8th mile drag racing facility on the planet. Clicks off a 356, crushes the record, crushes the field. I think that was probably the most impressive one, if not the most impressive single day performance in the history of the PDRA. Damn close. Like,
what do you think about incredible. The parity with those combinations in Pro Boost?
I think so there's an interesting thing. I spoke with John Selemi about this a little bit because you have to wonder, like, where the hell did this come from? Not that they're not capable of running really well. I mean, Melanie's won a lot of races, won some big races, won the Shakedown in Norwalk a couple of years back, won the Snowbird Nationals. She's had a tremendous amount of success, right? Or did she win the U.S. Street Nationals? Regardless, she's had a ton of success. So it's no surprise to see that continue. But the performance and the gap they put on everybody, I mean, I wrote in that story on the website, Stevie Fast Jackson's the one who always likes to crush everybody and step on their throat and all that. And he's the one that's good for a soundbite. But Melanie Selemi and John Selemi, her husband, who leads the charge on that program, calling the shots on the side piece Camaro, they stepped on everyone's throat in Pro Boost this past weekend. That was a performance of a lifetime, and you only hope that they're able to continue that. But I talked to John, and basically last year they kind of bounced around with their program. They went from the screw blown Hemi deal with a 3-speed transmission to the roots blown Hemi deal with a Liberty, and that's where they're at right now. They've got a roots blown Hemi with a 5-speed Liberty. And that combination is fast. From what I understand, they were making like innumerable runs on the hub dyno over the offseason. I heard the number 45, 50 runs on a hub dyno over the offseason, and clearly paying dividends. We've talked right here on this show how I think that we may look back at some point in the future. I don't know that we really understand how significant the hub dyno has been to the sport of drag racing.
About to say that.
Like, I think that will be a landmark.
It's gone from something that's like a
luxury to a
luxury or something that was questionable whether it was needed or not, to where
you
it's
have
like,
to have it.
It's a difference maker for these combinations now.
I think it starts everything off. You're so much further along. You're not trying to get it to idle. You're not, a lot of the things that you're fighting with a new combination are at the racetrack historically. Ironing out all those kinks and getting all those bugs out while you're in a shop with tools everywhere, air conditioning blowing, like you're not worried about it raining. You didn't have to fly a bunch of crew guys in. You really can't say enough about the opportunity that a hub dyno provides race teams. And again, I do think there will be a point in time when we're looking back and going, wow, do you guys remember when Joe Oplosky, to the best of my knowledge, brought out and like kind of made standard the hub dyno? I mean, he was like the first guy that I'm aware of that was out here running pro mods and running really big power cars on chassis dynos. I mean, don't you remember that video that went around of Mark Woodruff, his black Corvette, the one that's yellow now, on the chassis dyno, making 4,000 horsepower or whatever. And people hadn't seen that, right? And then a video came out of Bob Ram's Pro Nitrous or NHRA Pro Mod Camaro on that hub dyno. Then the next thing you know, Fuel Tech's got one, Modern Racing's got one, everybody's got one. And it's clearly a difference maker. And I look at that off-season testing, putting in the time when it's not convenient, clearly making the difference for John Selemi and company. And I'm anxious to see what the next couple of events look like for those guys. I mean, you can't help but figure Melanie's going to come in with a full head of steam, right? Wanting to right whatever wrong that exists in the elimination rounds there from the East Coast Nationals, going out on a whole shot. Not like a crazy bad whole shot or anything. Nothing for her to be hanging her head about, especially when it's a classic example of when you become the favorite, it changes things. No matter what, when you become the favorite, it changes things. And I'm anxious to see how this story unfolds, how they're going to handle the pressure of being one of the teams that have a target on their back, one of the teams that race from the front. We saw it in the NCAA finals, right? Playing with a lead is hard, right? It is so hard. Sorry, I'm not trying to bring up heartbreaking. Poor Mike, University of North Carolina.
Everybody comes swinging at you. You have the target on your back. They have nothing to lose. They know that if you've been consistent for a while, they know you're going to be consistent, and they're going to take a chance. And
that's I believe
they're going to take a chance with their setup.
Yeah, and it helps these drivers. Talking about these reaction times and talking about Stan Shelton, knowing that he's got a car underneath him that's that good and that consistent, has got to help his driving. I know, like when I raced with my dad, if we get a couple laps under our belt or a couple races where we hadn't shaken the tires or something, reaction times improve. It's almost like you're just unsure what's about to happen when you let go of that button if the thing is all over the place. But if you know this thing,
I've seen it 10,000 times.
A great team,
you're right.
It's going to help your reaction times. I think, like to your point about all the side-by-side runs, hub dynos, track prep, tires, technology, torque converters, automatic transmissions, and the traction control.
The list goes on.
How many more do I need to name? Have made this whole sport more consistent at this highest level, where these guys get a ton more runs. We've talked about this in the past, and are able to improve their driving and improve their reaction times.
And the cars are so much more. Yeah, I mean, the cars are more predictable than they have ever been in history, right? And so now you have an opportunity to actually hone your craft. Where, I mean, it's so funny. I can count. I mean, there's been multiple instances when I've been around a team, right? And the crew chief walks up to the door, the driver's strapping in, and he's like, "Hey man, I don't know what this thing's going to do, but hold on," and then the driver cuts the car goes right down Broadway, shockingly. And the driver cuts a 180 light, and the crew chief wants to strangle him in the pits. And it's like, dude, you told him you had no idea what was about to happen. Like, that is, you have a hand in this as well. And it's tough because that's when you see really good drivers shine. But I think a lot of these guys and gals can be really good when they have confidence in their mount. And that is, having faith in the horse underneath you makes all the difference in the world. I can't imagine someone winning the Kentucky Derby if they were on a horse that, all day long had been biting people's shoulders.
Could win, but could also just throw your ass off as soon as it comes out of the gate, right?
Right. Yeah. And that is a
anything
classic
in between.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we have seen historically. And I think that's why there have been, like Jason Scruggs comes to mind. That dude, it would seem, you never knew if it was going to scuff both guard walls or set a world record. You know what I mean? Are we going to see the underside of this thing, or are we going to see history
that was
made?
The era that he raced in too.
It was,
which to me is a reason why he's one of the ultimate badasses of the sport forever, is because he just was fearless in knowing that this thing could literally just do a backflip here on the starting line, or
it might.
Who knows what this thing's going to do? And even if it does make a good pass, what's it going to look like at the other end? I've seen that thing look like a fuel funny car at the end of the run.
Literally.
You know,
I remember when he was like blowing up engines there for like a short period of time when it was
every orifice, every breather,
you were seeing funny car style explosions. Like Jason Scruggs would bring his car back and the windshield was gone. And it'd be like, what what? You know, I mean, but that's the way they were running that program, and they were leaning on it. And it was really, really cool to see. But what's crazy to me is kind of bringing it back to the East Coast Nationals. 48 of 60 runs, 80% of these. I don't think that exists really in any other walk outside of the NHRA. I mean, that's just some damn good drag racing, and I'm going to pay attention to it in Houston. I'm going to keep track of the exact same stat and see what kind of numbers I get back, what kind of percentage I get back. I'm thinking in Houston, a guy would have to look at Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock, and just those be your factors, and see how what's that 45 potential side-by-side runs or whatever. And that's the kind of thing that I want to start paying attention to. And a guy can almost put a quality rating on shows. Like, hey, this was like an 80% show. 80% of the elimination round passes for the pros were side-by-side hella good drag races. And I'm going to try to keep track of that, because I think PDRA unknowingly may have set the bar this past weekend. A couple other things. We got to burn through this. I know we got a lot of ground to cover here today. Really cool to see Lexi Tanner and Amber Franklin racing in Pro 632. We talked on the show a couple of weeks ago with Corey Mahalik about how A-Fuel dragsters and Top Alcohol dragster as a whole has really become a breeding ground for our next generation, the next crop of Top Fuel funny car superstars, right? Matter of fact, we've seen some real stars in the sport of drag racing produced from those categories without any expectation of advancement, right? Not wanting to move up. Corey Mahalik pointed to A-Fuel and be like, hey man, I'm really happy right here where I'm at. I own this stuff. I'm racing at a high level. Megan Meyer, Rachel Meyer, both I feel became real celebrities in the sport of drag racing with no aspirations of racing Top Fuel or racing funny car. We're seeing Julie Natas do the same thing. She's got a big following, sponsorship support. And I think she obviously has some aspirations of moving into the Nitro ranks, but man, I think we can say the same thing about PDRA Pro 632. Camry Caruso came from here. This is a world that Camry came from. She's making waves in NHRA Pro Stock right now. We've got Lexi Tanner and Amber Franklin that I think are destined for Pro Nitrous competition, really doing well. Dylan Voss, the last couple of years, a world beater, one of the top teams in Pro 632, making the move to Mountain Motor Pro Stock, Extreme Pro Stock, showing promise, really running well. Really surprised me how well they ran this past weekend. And we can't forget Johnny Placino. Dude wins a world championship in Pro 632 and then backs it up with a freaking championship in Extreme Pro Stock. How about this? Is a killer class. Tony Gillig, obviously Tony Gillig, I believe, I mean, he's like a godlike figure out here in terms of drivers. He's a really talented dude, and he's done it all. But we've seen him. I mean, he was had found a home in PDRA Pro 632 with his super awesome Oldsmobile Cutlass, but sold that car over the offseason, acquired a Mountain Motor Pro Stock car, and now he's in the thick of things in Extreme Pro Stock.
I'm surprised you didn't buy it, Wes.
I wanted to, and he asked me about it, and yeah, it still haunts me a little bit, to be honest with you. I just don't. Yeah, I really wanted to own that car, and I'm heartbroken that I don't.
Don't worry, we have a Cutlass moment coming up in just a little bit.
We do have a Cutlass moment coming up, man. But I can't really say enough about this whole class. I'm looking here through my notes. I just want to make sure that we see Chris Rini back in Pro Nitrous, John Montecalvo in a Mustang. Weird Deal, another team that kind of came out of left field. Let's talk on this.
They did well. I mean,
they did really well. Were you surprised?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I thought it might take a race or so to get that deal worked out, but two veterans there. It's awesome to see Uncle Roy still involved. I mean, scary accident that he had at ZMAX Dragway. It was about a year ago now.
Yeah,
I think
right.
So.
Wasn't that at the Four Lines?
I think it was at the spring race last year. really bad, and you just cannot keep that man down. It's going to take a lot more than that to keep old Roy on the sideline. So kudos to that team. And Chris Powers taking home the win in Pro Stock. We
representing for Sonny's Racing Engines. We lost a legend last year in Sonny Leonard, and it's amazing to see how prominent he is still specifically in the PDRA and all of drag racing. But it's really cool to see his legacy, carried forward by all these racers. Right? Even John Monacovo made a special note that he always was a Chevy guy, always ran Sonny's Power, driving this car for Roy Hill. It changes things, but he still had Sonny's decal on the quarter window there, and it was a cool thing to see.
Yep. So what else? What else we got from any other news and notes from PDRA?
I'm looking here. What else?
Go check out this article. We need to link that up. But
Stevie Jackson, I think that was a big deal. From what I don't know if you guys were aware of this, and I guess maybe the hardcore Stevie fans may have noticed, but apparently this is the new outlaw car. I didn't know if this was the car they were just switching around to run NHRA as well. Not the case. This is, and I guess I noticed the cars are different, but this is an outlaw car.
He's got like a clone 21 Camaro or whatever. That's
everything that was in the Shadow. Yeah, everything that was in Shadow 2.0 is in this car, and this is their new kind of outlaw opportunistic door slammer. So from what I gather, they're going to try to run as many PDRA races as they can, as their schedule allows. They want to run more. There's some overlap and whatnot, so they obviously have to contend with that. But I think that's the car we're going to see at big radial races or at outlaw pro mod races. So it's cool to know that we're still in a time where Stevie's got two hot rods. One, that
we were a little concerned about that status after the Shadow was gone.
Yeah, I was genuinely, and I'm going, man, I hope to see him showing up at these races where an NHRA legal combination isn't ideal. I think it's a big deal to see him at the PDRA season opener, right? Like, I know that that's a highly financed operation. You start racing against cars that have countries represented on the side of them, and everybody feels differently about it. But it's a big deal for the racers, and I think just the pride and the ego of everybody involved with the PDRA to have an NHRA two-time Pro Mod World Champion doing battle with them, throwing his hat into the ring. It brings credence to everything that's happening inside of the PDRA. I think it brings some attention to what's going on with the PDRA, and it's an all-round great thing. And what's even better is that he didn't come in and win, right? Like if he came in and like cleaned house or something, it would probably potentially smack negative or be over the course of time would become problematic probably. But the way this has happened, come out, make some runs, be in the thick of things, be a part of the show, but not, just run roughshod over everybody. It's a really good thing. And I hope everybody that's involved with the PDRA, specifically those pro nitrous, pro boost, pro stock guys, I hope they're all walking around with their chest puffed out today. Tyler Crossnow, he deserves that same feeling, in my opinion. Tommy and Judy Franklin, Will Smith, Derek Scott, the list goes on. There's a lot, Kyle, there's a ton of people involved with the PDRA, and I really feel they should get the weekend off or the week off. That was a great way to start the season, and I'm genuinely happy for him, man. I'm looking forward to the next one, right? Where they go to Bowling Green. Yeah. April, the end of the month, headed to Bowling Green, Beach Bend Raceway. So the Door Slammer Derby. I'm looking forward to that one, man. A Beach Bend Bowling Green race, Beach Bend Raceway Park is like made for the PDRA, in my opinion. That's just a great venue.
That was the best place to race in IHRA drag racing 2002 or whatever that game was. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the tracks that you could choose. That was the place to race.
It's a beautiful place. Those covered grandstands. Yeah, man. It's got a honky tonk vibe, but still a killer racing surface. People go fast there. People set career best there. It'll be great to see the PDRA there at the end of April.